Hi Jim, sorry I'm late, man. I was suffering from one of these summer colds and it's been brutal, boy. I've been blowing my nose and not feeling well anyway.
I was wondering where
yeah,
you were.
well, that's where I was, bud. So the issue today is what do we do? How do we deal with a cylinder square? And why is a cylinder square when it's really a cylinder? And what if we have a cylinder square that's not square? How do we tell if we don't have the equipment to measure it? Isn't that kind of what it's about today? So let's assume that we have the following. Can you get a good shot of this, Jim? We have an angle plate of unknown accuracy, and we have a cylinder square, let's say, of unknown accuracy. Now, we're going to pretend this is a surface plate, which obviously it is not. So this is not the table we would work on, but for demonstration purposes, we brought these into the conference room here so we can show it nice and easy. So if the angle plate, let's say, is off this way 3 thousandths, let's say, or 5 or 10, it doesn't make any difference. And we don't know what the cylinder square with respect to its accuracy, is it off this way, or whichever way it is. So the first thing we need to do is put it up against the side, and we can take a piece of paper with the light source behind it, like so, and we can look through here and we can see a gap. While we're doing that, all we want to do is rotate the cylinder square until we find the largest gap. Now once we've done that, we can mark it with a red crayon or whatever you want, a lead pencil, doesn't make any difference. And then we rotate that around, and it should be, when we get around to 180, it should be the shortest gap or the smallest gap in the opposite direction. And we mark that. Now in theory, remember that 90 degrees from that, which is here, it has to be accurate. So this is 90. I'm just going to write a 90 on there and put a 90 over here. Let me explain that on a whiteboard. All right, so here's our cylinder square. It's a pretty looking circle, isn't it? And let's exaggerate, because I always do, for myself anyway, I always try to exaggerate everything because it makes it a lot easier for me to understand it. So that's a practice I've done all my life and something you guys might try to maybe possibly use. So let's assume that this is the high spot. In this case, it's going to be right about here. And this is the high spot or the low spot over here. With that in mind, then this side and this side have to be parallel. They can't be out of square, because we know it's out of square here and here. Therefore, if this is 12 o'clock and that's 6, then we got 3 and 9 have to be with 0 error.
Okay, we're looking at a plan view of the cylinder square.
Correct. I'm looking down at a plan view, as it's called, but I'm looking down from the top of it. So understanding this concept, and we apply it over here, then we know that our major error is here and here, and again, 90 degrees from there is no error. So with that understanding, we can now look at the cylinder square, and we can look at the angle plate and take a check with it with light, and now we can tell if the angle plate is off, because we know the cylinder square is true. And that's also a way to fix the cylinder square if we had to fix it. How would we fix it? Well, we'd put it on a lapping plate, and we already covered that in another video. But we'd put it on a lapping plate, and we touch it a little bit, and then recheck it and so forth. But that's exactly how you can check if a cylinder square is really true or not, is by rotating it until you find the high spot, find the low spot. Then we know that opposite of that, 90 degrees from that, is going to be true. It's going to be square, or parallel, if you will. So again, it doesn't make any difference, does it, Jim? If the angle plate is out or not, it doesn't matter. As long as you can look through it and you can judge, and I'm assuming you have good judgment, you can judge that the gap that's there, and when you rotate it, the gap that's on the other side. And if you get it even, you find the maximum gap on one side, the maximum gap at the top on one side, the bottom on the other side. The 90 degrees from that is neutral, as we showed on the whiteboard, and therefore you have a cylinder square that is square. So something else that came up was how do we make the cylinder square. But before we do that, I wanted to comment about, we did a video some time ago, Jim, you may recall, about the about using various kinds of edge finders. And the edge finder that was mentioned that I totally forgot about, and Jim Hillman mentioned it, and he said, you know, I use a broken drill, which you can do, and I totally forgot about it. We used to use dowel pins, like so. So the dowel pin, if you put it in a Bridgeport head or in a 3-jaw chuck, in a drill chuck, and you hold it and you come up against your edge, and you put a piece of paper in it, not a big one like this, of course, but a little one, and you come up against it and touch it. And I would suggest you can either do it while it's running or not. Is it going to be dead accurate? No, but it's not bad. You know, if you don't have an edge finder handy and you want to get it within a thousandth or two, and I'm assuming, folks, that your chuck is not running out that much. I'm assuming that the chuck is fairly true. But if it were running out substantially, what you could do is the same concept that we just did here with the cylinder square. Find a high spot, find a low spot, go to neutral, and you're right there. You're going to get it within probably less than a thousandth. So thanks, Jim, anyway, for bringing to my attention the broken drill concept. All right, going back to the cylinder square and how do we make this? The real trick to it is to make sure that you've got a good set of centers in it. Now, I'm assuming that we already have discussed, or you already know about the cylinder square itself. We made it out of 8620 tubing. We bored a hole on the side, on each end. We put a cap on there. We welded it. We put it back in the lathe, turned the weld off, put a nice recess in here, put the centers in, put it between centers in the lathe, and took a cut all the way across, sent it out for heat treating. Once we got it back from heat treat, then we ground it, and we ground the edges, the ends, which if you do that, remember we did the side wheeling, Jim, how we came in there with a side wheel? So if you touch it on one end, you're going to get it pretty square, almost dead square with the OD itself. Flip it around, do the other side. Once that's done, then you can send it out, and which is what I did in this case, and we put it in liquid nitrogen, and that also stabilizes it. We got it back and reground it and made sure that there was no taper in here. This is straight within about 50 millionths, which means about 25 millionths a side, right? Because we got two sides. And I know that this cylinder square is square. Then we, we did this, went through the same check. You can use an angle plate like we did, and believe it or not, when you get down below a tenth, with the right amount of light behind it, it turns blue, which is kind of an interesting thing. You'll be able to see the light come through if there is any in there. If there's any light that comes through, and if it's within less than a tenth, it turns blue, which is kind of cool. So you can tell using a cylinder square against an angle plate and rotating it 90 degrees at a time to make sure that it's what it's supposed to be, a cylinder square. So that's the story about cylinder square. Did I leave anything out, Jim, or did we cover it all?
I think we covered most of that.
Okay. Lastly, we've got some new videos coming out that we want to share with you in the next couple weeks. One of them, because we've had a lot of requests for it, one of them is going to be on patents. So we're going to have a patent attorney here, and we're going to talk about the different kinds of patents and trademarks, and why do you want a patent, why do you not want one, what happens, because we've had a lot of people that have sent in requests and saying that they have ideas and what do they do about patents. And there's some real pitfalls and some advantages, but you need to know about those, and we're going to discuss those. I don't think we can do it in one video. I think it's going to take 2 or 3 because it's pretty lengthy. So keep on watching. Tell your friends to subscribe. Any comments, questions, please send them to us. Love to hear from you. What did I forget?
That's also going to include, if you have a product, what it takes to get it to market.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, good point, Jim. What does it take to take a product to market? Because if you have an idea, and you may have an idea that you think is a great idea, but it may have existed for 30 years, or it may not be marketable. What are you going to do about that if it's not even marketable?
Or if it is a great idea, what are the steps in the pitfalls?
And how do you get there, right? How do you get it there? It's a good point. And it's not that easy. So we're going to cover all that territory in some upcoming videos. I get it all that time?
I think you got it now.
All right, great, thanks. All right, folks, so thanks for watching.